Welcome, everybody. My name is Isabelle Hoberg. I am the director here of the Residence Palace International Press Center. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this new edition of the Residence Palace Talks for Journalists, today focusing on how to investigate greenwashing in the financial sector. Before we dive into today's topic, a few words for those of you who are joining us for the first time. The Talks for Journalists are an initiative of the Residence Palace International Press Center, co-created with Belgian, European and international journalist associations and federations, as well as with the United Nations Regional Information Center for Western Europe, the Belgian Federal Institute for Sustainable Development, and with journalists themselves. These talks are roundtable discussions designed specifically for you, journalists and news editors, in the context of the climate emergency and the crossing of several planetary boundaries. Our intention is to provide you with practical tools to navigate misinformation, greenwashing, and the often highly technical aspects of the climate crisis that impact, as you know, every sector of our society, economy, finance, industry, agriculture, mobility, education, agriculture, employment, energy, culture, and more. These meetings are for you and shaped by you. If there are topics you would like to discuss, please let us know. Our speakers you would like to hear from, please let us know also. Today's session is a good example of this. It was suggested by a journalist who attended a previous session of the Residence Palace Talks for Journalists, Valentino, so thank you very much. So please, there is a sheet of paper at the entrance of the room, or you can come by us to let us know what would be interesting for you to cover. We aim to keep these exchanges an intimate and conversational character, a dialogue between experts and journalists. So each speaker will have a maximum of 10 to 15 minutes for their introduction, after which the floor will be open for discussion. The expert's introduction will be recorded, but not the discussions that follows. Please feel free to share your own experience or challenges you encounter on your own work field. Today's session will conclude at 10:30. The speaker's contact details will be displayed on this screen at the end, should you wish to follow up with them. Don't forget to enjoy the breakfast in the corner. Between partners, we have planned a rotating system of governance, with each partner taking charge of organizing a meeting in turn. Today's session has been organized by the International Federation of Journalists and the European Federation of Journalists. I give now the floor to Pamela Morinière from the International Federation of Journalists. I wish you all a rewarding and inspiring morning. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks for being with us. I'm trying not to hide our colleague who's joined us from Brazil. So today we're going to talk about greenwashing in the financial sector. Before we start our discussion with very interesting panelists, a few words about the International Federation of Journalists. For those of you who've never heard of us, we represent journalist unions and associations across the world. We defend social justice, fair working conditions for journalists and ethical journalism. And we have an ongoing project at the moment on disinformation and misinformation in the climate sector. It's a subject that is very important for us, and we try to raise journalist awareness as much as we can on the importance to report fairly, adequately and ethically on this issue. Today we have three very interesting speakers that are complementary, very complementary. We will start with Morgan Kubici. Do I pronounce it correctly? Sorry. From Financité. Financité, for those of you who don't know this organization, it is a Belgian organization that publishes a very important ranking of banks and their investment every 2 years. And Morgan will explain a little bit what the organization does exactly, what is this ranking about, and more importantly, they are about to release their latest report in a couple of days, so you will get an opportunity to hear about the first results. And then we will hear about 2 award-winning journalists, Stefano Valentino and Giorgio Michalopoulos, sorry, who have been working together on greenwashing in the financial sector. They've published a number of articles on this issue, and they will tell us more about their investigative work, their methodology, and maybe inspire you to get more involved in this sector and help them debunk what's happening. We will start with Morgan. Morgan, you have the floor.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Who are we? I think Pamela already said a few words, but we are an NGO active in Belgium. We're part of what's called Education Permanente, so education throughout life in Belgium. So we do a lot of work with citizens. We also do research that I will talk about today. We do some kind of lobbying. If you live in Brussels, you may have heard of us fighting against banks who are reducing the number of ATMs in Brussels, which is quite difficult. And we also have innovation projects, so we try to build a bank. And we also have complementary local currencies, and we do some kind of financing for social economy. So we work a lot on greenwashing, of course, and we have 2 ways of trying to prove greenwashing exists, or does it exist? So we have 2 ways of going about it. First, we have the scan that we do with Verfin, which is our Dutch-speaking equivalent in Belgium. And we examine the investment policies of banks operating in Belgium. So this means we analyze the policies that the bank want to publicly impose on itself. It's a great way of knowing the position, what they do to themselves. But of course, there's a limit to this exercise, is that do as I say and not as I do. So maybe they don't respect what they publicly put out there. So we have another way of examine if greenwashing exists. It's with investment funds. Now in Europe we have a methodology. Well, they need to say if they are sustainable or not. For a few years it didn't exist. Now since 2021 we have a way of knowing, and we actually look at what's in the fund, and we have a way of cross-examine with 4 blacklists that I will talk about. So for the scan, we examine the Oh, it's okay. We look at the policies regarding 10 themes. So, of course, today I will talk more about climate change, but be aware that we also look at biodiversity, weapons, gender, transparency, corruption, bonuses, tax, human rights, and labor rights. We use an international methodology developed by Fair Finance. This has a few perks. It allows us to compare at the EU level, but also an international level. For instance, the Dutch do the analysis for ENG, so we don't have to do it again. And if some way, somehow, the French want to do the scan, we already have the analysis for BNP. Yeah. So this is how what it looks like. It's not it's not very sexy or anything. What we do is we have a few elements. For instance, the first one is for its own direct and indirect greenhouse emissions, the financial institution establishes measurable reduction objectives. And if we find in their public policies somewhere, somehow they say that they do, then they can have the basic score. And it can also apply to corporate credits, project finance, proprietary assets, and asset management. So they have to prove that they implement this policy in all their activities. Then we put the source in and the assessment saying if they had the score, why yes, why not. And then the financial institution has an opportunity to respond. So we work with the banks. They're not surprised when we publish the scan. We ask them for the documents, then we send them the first assessment. They can have, they can give a feedback, and then there's a last assessment. Most of them are glad to cooperate with us because, of course, when they give a feedback, it gives them an opportunity to have the score when we, of course, we are only humans, so maybe we didn't see the policy or we didn't catch the, maybe a few words. Some of them, most of them, we analyze for the first time. They don't want to cooperate. They don't want to give us feedback. But then 2 years later, suddenly, they're glad to give us feedback because they see that it changes a lot. So how are the scores? You can, yeah. This is from the scan 2024. You can see that most banks do score very bad. The first bank is always Triodos. Triodos, of course, has a lot of sustainable objectives, and they always score very high. And then you have VDK, which is a small Dutch-speaking, well, now they are also in Wallonia, but it's quite a small Belgian bank. And then Argenta, who is also quite small. And then you have the big banks, international banks, ING, KBC, Belfius, which is Belgian, but and BNP. And they don't score, for climate change, they don't score very high. One limit to the methodology that I spoke about is Crélan. Crélan has a very bad score. It was the first time that they were analyzed for the 2024 climate change scan report. And at the time, they didn't even have a sustainability report. So of course, the policy analysis is very bad, but we also know that Crélan doesn't invest in fossil fuel, doesn't invest in those very bad investments that the big banks do. So this is the limit to the methodology. I can already tell you if you want to go. So of course I can't release the scores now, but Crélan doubled their score from 2024 to 2026 just by having a sustainability report and having some policies, because it's something that you say, no, we don't invest, but is it written somewhere? Is when the direction of the bank will change, will they continue to implement the policy that you didn't have formalized? This year, what we saw also, just a little throwback, yeah, is that we still have Triodos and VDK at the very top, but most of the other banks, including Argenta, who was the third bank, they are stepping back. So they are opening the doors to new investments. For many years, they were getting better and better, and that's one of the objectives of the scan, is that we can see there's a hole in the policy, and they can change it, and they can get better. It was the case for many years, and now they're just stopping or going back. So regarding the funds, we've been doing this for 20 years. And so I'm very happy that now investigative journalists are also doing it, and there's another voice. So what we do is we look at Article 9 funds. Why Article 9? Is because of the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. Article 9's funds are the only one who can pretend to the word sustainable. So they're supposed to be the best of the best. We found that there were 409 funds distributed in Belgium, and we were able to analyze 175 of them. Why? Because most of them, they are supposed to publish their annual reports, and we can have a look at their assets, and they don't. Or they do it in a very, very polite way, so not very publicly, and we are not able to know what is in the fund. So we are by no means amateurs. We've been doing this for 20 years, and even we aren't able to see what's really in the fund. So there's, first of all, a big transparency problem. And then what we do when we have the 175 funds that we know what's in them, we cross-examine with 4 blacklists that we develop in-house. So the first one is fundamental rights. It's basic human rights. It's humanitarian, social, civil, environmental, labor rights. It's really what you should apply at a regular level, not even being a sustainable fund. Then we have one climate blacklist. It's not about projects that are a little carbon intensive. It's big fossil fuel projects. So it's new fossil fuel projects. It's coal, it's tar sands, it's deforestation. It's by no means aligned with the Paris Agreement. Then we have nuclear, so it's nuclear weapons, nuclear production, and also countries that don't respect the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And then the last one is weapons that we'll talk about a little bit. It's conventional and unconventional weapons. So unconventional weapons you are not supposed to invest in when you're Belgian investment funds. It's forbidden, but of course they do it. So what we found for the climate, you can go forward, yeah. So on the funds that we were able to analyze, we found that 69% of them hold at least one asset on the climate blacklist. So those are the best of the sustainable funds. They're supposed to be the best of the best. And most of them invest in at least one asset. And on the next slide, we can see that it's mostly fossil fuels, but also deforestation, coal, non-conventional fossil fuel, and also a lot of new projects. And we all read the international reports that said that we need to stop investing in new projects regarding fossil fuels immediately if we want to have any chance of stopping the climate change. So this together is 257 million euros. It might not seem a lot, but of course, we weren't able to analyze all the funds. If we were able to analyze all the Belgian funds or all the EU funds, it would be much higher, but it already gives you a gross estimation. For weapons, first, worst promoters, BNP, Pictet, Nordea, which is normally quite good investment funds, and AXA. And their favorite worst investments, most of them it's ENGIE, it's expansion in fossil fuels, NL, which is active in expansion and coal, RWE, which is active in expansion and coal, and EDP, expansion of fossil fuel. So you see that it's not small projects, and those are the very best sustainable funds. Regarding weapons, we found that half of the funds that we analyzed hold at least one asset on the, no, it's not climate, it's weapon, of course, on the weapon blacklist. And 27 of them are investing in controversial weapons. So this means anti-personnel mines, it means really harming weapons. It's not your regular gun. And lastly, a word about the labels. In Belgium, we have a label called Towards Sustainability. So, of course, they were very careful to say towards sustainability and not sustainable. It's managed by the sector itself. So it's called FEBELFIN. It's the Federation of the financial sector. It's basically the financial lobby for Belgium. And 25% of the distributed funds in Belgium hold the label. This is from the 2024 reports, because we stopped analyzing it because the results, as you see, are just exactly the same. So basically half of the funds that we analyzed had the label, but the results are exactly the same. It's not because they have this that they are better. For fundamental rights, exactly the same amount of funds holds an asset on the blacklist of fundamental rights. For weapons, it's exactly the same. For climate, it's even a little worse. And for nuclear, it's a little better. But it's basically the same. So it means it's supposed to be a label for the citizens to inform, to say if you have this, then your fund is going towards sustainability. It shows that it's not. Lastly, if you want to keep in touch, of course, we put our research, we have a newsletter, and be aware that next Tuesday we will publish the new results of the 2026 scan.
We're going to move on to our next speakers, Stefano and Giorgio now. I don't know which one of you wants to start.
Yeah, I will start. Yeah. Hello, I am Giorgio. We are two freelance journalists, and we publish all our investigation with Vox Europe, which is a Paris-based news outlet specialized in European affairs. We have the editor-in-chief, which is just standing in front of me. And we join forces to investigate this very complex topic. And indeed, we managed to analyze all the EU funds. I'm going to be very fast, since Giorgio will dive into the technicalities of the topic. So this is the webpage of Vox Europe, where you can find all our series of investigation. They're very long. If you have a week off from your work, probably you will have time to read all of them. By the way, I want to thank Giorgio, who just woke up 3 at night in Brazil to join this presentation. Normally that's the time when people come back home from nightclubs. He's with us, so big applause. So I want to explain what is it, financial greenwashing. So you may have heard, or maybe you had a meeting with financial consultants who are trying to sell you funds with labels like sustainable, green, environment. Sometimes they just show the top list of investors, but they don't tell you which is the total portfolio of investments. Well, we found out that many of these financial products, actually they are misrepresenting the true dimension of their portfolio. They use claims using fancy names related to green environmental sustainability terms. Well, actually, when you look at the portfolio, you see all kind of crappy stuff like fossil oil companies and whatsoever. So basically, they are misleading investors as to the substance of the investments. We mostly relate to the ESG, which is a nice acronym, which set the criteria for any financial products which claims to be sustainable. Normally, the criteria are environment, social, and governance parameters. And to make fun of the ESG acronym, we titled one of our projects "Exposing Speculative Greenwashing." You use the same acronym initials, but to make fun of the ESG. In this case, the speculation is the fact that the financial institutions they cheat investors for actually not delivering the true benefit of the fund, which is achieving sustainability goals, not just financial returns. As Morgan said, we focus on EU-regulated funds. So the funds are regulated by legislation set up by the EU. And this regulation has a couple of articles which refer to different kinds of products. Giorgio will explain better the technical definitions. The main problem with this regulation is that it doesn't forbid financial institutions from proposing funds which invest in polluting or harmful activities. It just requires financial institutions to disclose the criteria and the reason why they consider that their funds are sustainable, even though they invest in polluting companies. So, for example, a bank which is promoting a funds which invest in Shell, Total, BP, can explain in the document circulating among the investors. Why consider that the fund is still sustainable despite investing in those companies? One answer I had from financial institutions when I asked them, why you named your fund green or climate transition while despite investing in Total Energy? And the answer was quite funny. They said, because Total Energy not only is active in extractive industry, but it's also providing consultancy services to other companies to become more sustainable. So this is ridiculous. So now I'll give the floor to Giorgio, who is going to walk you through these complicated techniques and tools we use. Before then, I want to tell you which are the main themes of our investigation. First of all, we expose the loopholes in the EU legislation which make room for asset managers to mislead investors through actually giving them a blank check as to the criteria they want to use to claim that they're sustainable, that their funds are sustainable despite investing in polluting companies. Then we also investigated the actual impact, the human dimension of green funds. So we traveled to South Africa and to Germany to show the impact on communities and environment of polluting activities which are sponsored by green funds. In this case was coal mining in South Africa and Germany, which were in a financial, green financial products marketed by Allianz and JP Morgan. And then also we have a series showing which are the tech tactics which are used by banks and financial institutions to actually mislead investors with their fancy green names. So the floor is to Giorgio now. You can go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Giorgio Michalopoulos. I'm based in Brazil, but we collaborate. It's been 3 or 4 years with Stefan and Vox Europe, so it's a pleasure to present our work. So first thing I would like to emphasize that we use a follow the money approach. We use extensive data analysis, Excel spreadsheets. And I want to clarify that these investments that we are talking about in SFDR, which is the European regulations, are investments from banks, large banks and asset managers holding shares in these companies. This means that they own a quota of the company. They are shareholders. And it is a self-sustaining cycle in which holding share of the companies increases also the market value of the company, increases profitability for the company, and this means also that they can increase the distribution of dividends to the shareholders. And this self-sustaining cycle also profits from harmful events to the world. I just want to show you, since we have a French-speaking audience, the evolution of the shares of an individual share of Total Energies. So here, more or less, you have the beginning of the war on Iran, and you can see how it increased the value, because the value of oil increased. So an experiment that the audience can do when going back, if you have time, it's looking at the investments on the green investments, the green products we show in our investigation on Vox Europe, and check if the fund presented as Article 8, 9, sustainable investment, which are exposed to oil companies, are increasing their profits to the clients in the last months. So that being said, we collaborated with an academic researcher who works a lot with extensive data extraction. So we guided him to extract this data. So the first thing was to select a sample of companies of from different polluting industries. So we selected, I think, 8 of the most polluting industries according to the IPCC reports. And we extracted a large number of companies in that field, in that industry. Afterwards, and you can change slide, yes, we selected the top 25 CO2 emitters in the most carbon-intensive sectors. So we had oil and gas, we had mining, we had aviation, automotive, and so forth. And we used the total CO2 emissions from these companies, which according to an international protocol are divided into scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 and 2 being the direct emissions from the company, scope 3 being the indirect emissions. So in the case of fossil fuel companies, the indirect emissions are those who are generated from the use of the final product, from, for example, aviation, of the fossil, no, to use the to alimент the flights. So once we had the sample, once we had the total CO2 emissions, we did a ranking of these companies, and we were able to extract the top 25. And afterwards, and you can move, we identified the green investments which were holding shares into these top 25 CO2 emitters for each sector. And this was quite complex because we had to extract the whole shareholding ownership, which is also out of the regulation. So you also have investments which are not defined as Article 8 and 9, mostly in 2023 when we conducted this investigation, because now the ESG market is accounting to more than 70% of the total European market at least. So we were able to extract all the shareholding, the ESG shareholding, and afterwards, this is interesting. I will complement something which Morgan said, which is about Article 9. At the time of the investigation, Article 9 investments could use the word sustainable. So they could use the word sustainable while investing into fossil fuel companies. So we added a further layer of analysis, a further filter of analysis to see the funds that were using the word sustainable, climate change, climate transition, both for Article 8 and Article 9 as well. So this was a quite complex analysis because we had to translate, as if you can see in the slide, we had to translate the word sustainable for many languages of European Union. So I will go directly to the next slide, which is showing you a little bit how stressful was our work, our daily work. And this is a picture of our laptop in the months of the investigation, containing all the funds, all the name of the funds, all the shareholdings into the most polluting industries of the world. And the main challenge was also sharing all this data with all our fellow colleagues from AIC, which is European Investigative Collaborations, with which we publish the work. Stefano can tell you something more afterwards. So, okay, this just provides a quick notion of how was it. So we can go to the next one.
If you keep looking, you will get hallucinated, probably. Yeah.
So the last step then was document analysis. And this was very interesting because basically this is the final output that the asset manager, the bank, will provide to the final client, which is putting his or her money into the product. And we were able to expose many fallacies, both of the regulation and from asset managers, on how they interpreted the climate action of fossil companies. I will just display here for you that this document from a product called Developed World Sustainable Fund was just saying that as a measure to, which was investing in Shell as well, it as a measure to see if a fossil company was decreasing its its carbon emissions was using carbon intensity reduction, which is it's carbon emissions divided for the revenues of the company. So basically, if you increase the revenues, the carbon intensity is decreasing. So it's not necessary to reduce carbon emissions, but moreover, this asset manager was using scope 1 and scope 2 emissions for measuring carbon intensity, which is a fallacy because scope 3 emissions account for more than 90% of total emissions of a fossil company. So you can see already the controversy here on how to interpret both the disinformation from fossil companies and from asset managers. Now I will leave to Stefano because I think I gave a lot of information already.
So the bottom line is that claims by green funds in terms of carbon emission reduction, they are not based on the reduction of absolute emissions. They are based actually on the reduction of emissions relative to sales of fossil fuels. So Total Energy doesn't have to reduce the emissions. It needs to expand production and sales. So the more it expands production, the more it's going to be considered climate friendly, which is actually scientifically misaligned with the Paris Agreement. But that's actually the criteria that asset managers are using. Also, and these criteria actually are endorsed by the EU legislation. So we can say that actually is institutionalized greenwashing at the EU level. It's not just a problem of the asset manager. Asset managers are just playing with favorable rules. If you have questions about these technical aspects, you can ask later. Now, I'm going to show some figures which show the scale of the greenwashing. Stay here, or shall I hide behind the screen in case some of you cannot see? So, as Giorgio said, we analyzed the investment in the companies, in the top 25 emitting companies in the 8 sectors which, according to IPCC, contribute the most to climate change. And these 8 sectors, as you can see, are responsible for up to 75% of carbon emissions. So actually, you can see the scope of our investigation is quite relevant in terms of impact on climate change. In each sector, the top 25 emitters that we analyzed, which are present in the portfolio of the green funds, they represent over 2/3 of the carbon emissions of all the other companies in the same sector. And the total emissions of all these top 25 in all 8 sectors, they represent 3 times the total emissions of the year 2022.
Which scope is that?
Those are all scopes.
Scope 3 as well?
Yes, yes. But when we analyzed, basically we didn't, because to avoid overlapping scope 1, 2, and 3, we only we didn't attribute the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions to each fund. We just calculated the total scope 1, 2, and 3 only for oil and gas.
Scope 3 can be overlapping with scope 1 in another sector.
Yeah, that's why we calculated the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions only for oil and gas. Okay, because oil and gas, there is no overlap. Because oil and gas are the source of the emissions of all other sectors which are buying fossil fuel to power their installations or instruments. So these are data from 2023, but then we expand our investigation and we use data in 2024. And you can see that in 2024, 33 billion were invested through green funds in oil and gas only. In 2023, 20% of the green investments in oil and gas, 20% of the funds were using misleading ESG-related labels. So that's actually the real greenwashing. Not only the so-called green funds are investing in polluting activities, but they are marketing those products with green-related labels, which are the most misleading thing for our investors. You have other figures on top which are interesting. So the total amount of green investments in the top 25 emitters in all 8 sectors were almost 90 billion. You have lots of funds, over 4,000 funds at the EU level that we analyzed, and 700 or even over of asset managers. Here you have nice graphics showing again the top 10 asset managers which are invested the most through green funds in oil and gas, and the top 5 oil and gas companies which are present the most in the portfolio of green funds. Yeah, this is our funny play humoristic title on ESG. And then I give the floor again to Giorgio, who is going to show you a second example of our investigation, which is exposing asset managers which are investing in defense sector through green funds.
Oh, this is the last investigation we published with cross-border collaboration with, well, coordinating media Vox Europe, then Italian ERP Media, Mediapart in France, and El País in Spain. We showed the construction of a narrative at European level, which allowed the increase of green ESG sustainable investments into the defense industry. Basically, as I said, the increasing market share of green investments was a worry for the defense industry, which was always out of this kind of sustainable products. So what they did was pushing the European Commission to convince the financial industry to increase the amount of shares into such funds. And they did so by creating a great Orwellian motto, we called it this way: no sustainability without security. And we exposed this through some lobbying documents that we obtained via FOIA requests, and also, of course, policy reports and the policy documents provided by the defense industry itself. And what we did is also tracing all the green sustainable investments into the defense industry, and the spike that they had in the last 2 years, which is considerable. So I recommend you accessing the article into the Vox Europe webpage. And maybe we can discuss this more later. I don't want to, yes.
So you may ask how we can fund our work. As you imagine, this investigation requires time-consuming research between a month and sometimes even we exceeded 1 year. So we got grants from different funders. You have the logo here, a little bit of promotion for our donors. And we publish in different media outlets across Europe, with which we have a media partnership. And yeah, we got some awards for our story. You have Gianpaolo Accardo, who is editor of Vox Europe, who is taking photos now. And now we are going, just 2 seconds. So far we have done work in a kind of artisanal way. We want to industrialize the work, we want to automatize it, and we are developing a kind of a startup using AI to generate data at light speed. And we are going to promote it among different partners or stakeholders. So if you want to collaborate, that's an opportunity. And yes, I think that's a European scale problem, so it requires collaboration between journalists, and we are open to do cross-border collaboration with you if you have any idea. Okay, now you can ask the question.
Thank you very much to both of you. Big round of applause to our speakers, first of all. Thanks for sharing this insightful data and content with us. I would also like to point that, unfortunately, this kind of work is always funded outside media organization. You need a special fund to do that, unfortunately. So thanks for sharing this. And I think also from the very beginning, that was also your approach. You wanted to share with colleagues the way you work on this issue, because you think it's important that this kind of work develop more. And I thank you for this initiative, because it's very valuable. We would like to open the floor to questions. If you have some, this is an opportunity. If you want to ask a question to Morgan, or a question to Stefano or Giorgio, you may need some clarifications on certain aspects. I don't know if everyone is familiar with this regulation, this EU regulation, for instance, but maybe that's just a personal question. Anyway, the floor is open. Feel free.